one that's got a lot of time.
Is that for me?
But I couldn't see you.
I thought Sandy wouldn't come see you. He looked good.
I don't believe I'll go see him pretty soon then.
Yo, they told me that you didn't like it. They think it is hard.
People or all of us have some things that are kind of pressing and maybe a few people need to go. But just 2 or 3 things, then if other people go, they can go, and then we'll try to do some things that we talked about as part of tonight. That's to share some stories concerning my brother Ralph. Next year will be Helen and Pete, and the Helen and Pete family's turn to host. And from talking with Helen, unless things have changed, it's going to be on Saturday night, December the 17th. And so go ahead and say where. Well, there's been some talk here in the last few hours about having it at Daddy's house. And he indicated that he'd be willing to let that happen, and would clean up some of the bedrooms and the upstairs where people could wander through different parts of the house. And I know particularly from my daughter's standpoint that they felt it would be very special to them to be able to have Christmas at Daddy's.
I'd like to have it down there one time while I live. Now, we won't have as much room as we've got here, but we can all...
That's all right.
Old hen with her little chickens when it's coming up the storm, get under each other's wings.
So it'll be then the December the 17th at Daddy's in Bowling Green.
Go see if everybody, if it suits everybody.
Nah, this is Everybody's agreeing, I think. I want to make one other announcement. On July the 16th in '94, you remember we agreed to have the Mammy Dewberry reunion every 2 years. So this will be our Mammy Dewberry reunion. The cousins reunion, but we do invite aunts and uncles. It'll be at the City Park in Tompkinsville, Saturday, July the 16th at 1 o'clock. And the structure has been put together is that we're just going to buy shoulder and barbecue it there at the park. And Bobby is going to take a lead in that and have baked beans and coleslaw and drinks, and then we'll just divide up whatever that cost is when we're there. So don't bring anything, just bring yourself and your family, and again, that'll be July the 16th. We probably ought to talk just a little bit about our reunions in May and September. I know someone had suggested that maybe we go to a July 4th, thereabouts, July 4th, and just have one. I guess we ought to talk a little bit about that for '94. And I assume, Daddy, those will also be in Bowling Green at your farm. Of course, they'll be outside.
How many of my grandchildren or great-grandchildren have never been to my place in Bowling Green? Would you hold up your hand? You've never been to my place.
Of course, we've had 2 there this summer, so that's helped out a whole lot, eliminated the number that would have held up their hand. But we want to go with 2 in '94. We want to go with 1 in '94. Somebody share your thoughts. Share them with this group rather than wait until you get in the car driving home and take it out on whoever you're traveling with.
July 4th, my mother's family has their Christmas.
Let's not start having
We
Christmas
can't
in
have
July.
I want to thank everybody for the gifts.
We thank you for the money. Just keep it
And
coming.
when somebody tells you you have to be good for Santa Claus to come to see you, you tell them that I said it's really not so.
Everybody wanted me to tell you that they thank you for the money, and next year have 1 more 0 on that bill.
If my ship would have come in a little earlier, I might have had it this time.
Want to go to 2, May and September, stay with what we've been doing? Yeah, I'm seeing more nods for that, so that's what we'll do.
Well, I know that we have a 4th of July for my
So the
family.
Hall family has a 4th of July.
So
Okay.
if you
so-
miss one, then that's it
Yeah.
until Christmas.
Okay, now let's talk pretty quickly about when.
Second Saturday for October.
Second Saturday in May, second Saturday in September. Fair enough? Everybody agree with that? Okay. Everybody continue to share that with the ones that have left us already.
Mike, you writing all this down? I ain't got an ink pen. I can't leave the banker come out here tonight without an ink pen.
I have a great niece that,
Oh, wait a minute.
yeah, 2 of them here have to wait.
Did every one of my family, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, they all get little money? If they didn't, you blame Jan for it.
Did everybody get their gift from Dad? Money? I believe they did, Daddy.
You got the perfect thing.
We already do that.
July 16th.
No, not July.
And by the time I eat all this candy, cookies, and all this sweet stuff, you all be wanting to come down to my house to get some sugar.
Yes. Okay, the May will be Saturday the 14th, May 14th. September will be Saturday, September 10th. July 16th, Saturday, Mammy Dewberry, and December 17th, Strode Christmas. Another question now is what time for the May And September, well, I guess all of them.
9, September, what day is it?
10. September 10th.
You don't have to take that up, Melissa, that's her birthday.
Which one?
September the 10th.
We've been, I think we've been trying to gather at Daddy's about 3, and then eating about 5,
She said
5:30.
it'd be all right if everybody brought her a present.
More than.
Is that what time we want to eat? Say eat about 3, eat about 5, 5:30? Which one?
No later than that.
May 3 and 8 and 5.
Okay, 3 and 5 for May and September. And Helen, eat at 6. We'll eat at 6 for Christmas. Anything else that we need to talk about and cover just a little bit? Well, we wanted to talk and share some stories about our brother Ralph. And I thought of how that Sandy and Jay were their ages when Ralph passed away, and how their children now are getting close to those ages. And I hope this is special. I hope it's not special from the standpoint of being sad, but special from the standpoint of recalling memories of such a great brother that he was, a great father that he was. Not that he was perfect, but he had a lot of great qualities about him, qualities that's still present in this room today, and I think have been special to a lot of us. I can't say that I was able to think of a lot of stories that I thought would be, that I just thought of. I just was not able to think of a lot of them. The ones I thought of are ones that have been shared with me. And but one of the things I've become, I've always been, I guess, a real NASCAR fan. I can remember when Pete and Joe took me to my first race in Louisville, Kentucky, and I love NASCAR racing. And I've always thought Ralph would have been a great NASCAR driver. I can remember getting in a black car with him one time, and between our house and Fountain Run, he was up to 120 miles an hour, all the way down there, I guess. And he'd get more out of a car, I believe, than anybody I've ever been around. And I remember one time, I guess it was when they lived in Bowling Green, and we were down there, that he was coming up the lane, and we were there where the barn is, and he was coming just kind of straight at us and straight toward the barn, and had a smile and all this, and just as hard as he could go and hit that right brake, and that tractor at this last second just whips right around there, and he just winked and got off, and I thought, man, he's going to hit the barn. I thought he could get more from that standpoint. Now, Daddy would probably tell you that he also tore up some things as part of operating farm equipment, but he also told those kind of stories about me, and I don't believe all of it was true. Hazel, I don't know if you want to just kind of start. I know you're not feeling well and wanted to leave earlier. If you want to tell some stories first that maybe you thought of. One of my favorite stories is one I've asked Barbara to tell. So I'm sure you're going to try to stay with us, honey. Okay, all right. So I'm not sure how we want to try to go, but Barbara, you want to just tell the story I asked you to tell? And why don't you, if you don't care, Barbara, stand up here. And well, it's people filming us, and this
Well, what he told me to tell, it was Lynn was going to start the school in the next year, and it was the fall festival at Austin Tracy. And of course, we never had any money. And I was wishing that I could take Lynn, because Lynn was a shy little girl, and I thought it would be good for her. She would see the school. And Ralph came by. I think he'd been out working somewhere or something. And he said he was going to the festival, and was we going? And I said, no, we're dead broke, but I wish we could take Lynn. And he said, I ain't got but $1 and something. So he went on out. They went to the barn to get something on him. Here he came back in. And he reached in his pocket and he gave me that $1.50-some, I think. He said, here, you take it. He's reaching. He said, shoot, I don't have to have money to have a good time. He said, I'll just go and I'll just have the best time in the world. And I said, well, I'm going to take your money, but he insisted. So I took his money and Lynn and I went to the festival. William wasn't, I think he was getting a coin, he didn't come in till later. But anyway, one of the first that I saw, they had this booth of selling women's hats. Old hats, you know, that was dress-up hats but out of style. And over from it there stood Ralph with the biggest phenomenon ever. And somebody bought him a hat, you know, and he was going. But he had his hat on and he wasn't having a good time. And, you know, I always thought about it. He shared what he had. Now, can I tell another one?
Yes,
This is a little meaner one. One time, he got a bunch of boys to help Daddy cut tobacco. And I don't remember how many it was, but Earl Wayne Bright was one of them and Shelby Lawson. And Claude Kindred, a lot of you all will remember, lived in Daddy's house. And Claude was probably in his 60s, but he was trying to doodle right along, that was Daddy's word for it, with those kids. And they was cutting up and they got a little rowdy, of course, and Claude could keep up. But all of a sudden, somebody threw a walnut and it just whizzed right by Claude's head. And it made him very angry. And he grabbed his spike and he was going after Earl Wayne Bright. And Earl Wayne calmly stood his ground and he said, I did not throw that one. And so Daddy got Claude stopped and he said, now I guess maybe you better go on home. And I guess Claude kind of settled down and realized that he had and he went home and he didn't get mad at Daddy. But anyway, long in the afternoon, Ralph come up and sometimes he'd say Mr. Hall and sometimes he said Vestal, and I don't know which he said that time, but he said, Earl Wayne didn't throw that one. I did.
Said what now, Barbara?
He said, Earl Wayne didn't throw that walnut. I did. So, but they didn't throw any more walnuts.
I can't remember a lot of stories to tell, but I do remember that Ralph spent some time with us. And I know he was helping Sam do something. They was out in the yard or doing something, or out in the tobacco patch or something, and Sam told him that he would buy him all the cold drinks. They was going to go to town. And he said, I'll buy you all the cold drinks that you can drink. So when they got up there, you were 6, didn't you?
It was just down to face then.
Well, this one I remember, Randall reminded me that they were going to do this tonight. Sandra Gay probably remembers coming to our house a lot of times when we were just real little. In fact, they visited us more probably than any member of the family. And we always appreciate them coming and enjoying them because we had a lot in common. We had 4 little girls, 2 of these, of course. And they always came and we went to church and revivals, different places. And the Thomas Ford would come a lot to sing, and we never missed one of those. And so you were at our house one weekend, and of course it was real hectic to get up and get breakfast and get to Sunday school and church. 4 little girls and 4 adults in one bathroom. So we were in the kitchen, and I guess we had already eaten breakfast, but anyway, Ralph came through, and he said, and he had put on his clothes, and he had put on Nancy's bra on over his clothes. And he said, and he had a roll of toilet paper in his hand. He said, by Dad, that was his word. He said, I gotta go have a good, you know what? And he said, I'll just go to the bar, and I can't get to the bathroom. So Nancy said, well, are you gonna wear that on out? He said, yeah, so out the door he went to his bra. And he was gone and gone and gone. Felt like Randall usually, as long as he was newspaper. So that always stood out in my mind, you know. I was in the bathroom, and Ralph couldn't get there. He couldn't follow.
I always thought that Ralph was one of the strongest physical standpoint people that I really was around or knew. I just always had that feeling about him. He was really strong from that standpoint. And Billy Murphy, I thought was stronger than Ralph. I thought Billy Murphy, growing up as a little boy, was the biggest, meanest, most physical person that I've ever encountered. And I remember one time we was down at the Sam Austin place topping tobacco, and Thomas Russell was with us, and Thomas Russell and Ralph and Billy and them run around quite a bit together. And we kind of got to talking a little bit about Billy and Ralph, and Thomas told me that Billy would not mess with Ralph. That Billy Murphy would not mess with Ralph.
Well, you didn't know you was going to grow up and be bigger than Billy, did you?
They were best of buddies, I'll tell you that. Ralph and Billy. And what I want to tell is a little mischievous thing that me and Ralph done. I know. One time after Daddy, he'd leave to go off to church, and he'd always write down the miles on the pickup. And Ralph learned how to unhook the speedometer. And I think Randall taught him.
Don't be talking about Ralph.
But this one particular time, we took a bunch of our winter tubes and went down to the old Brown Ford before they redone it, that bridge across there. And we was all going in swimming. And we all had a inner tube. Of course, I don't know whether any of us could swim or not. And if he didn't pull me out there and took my inner tube away from me, there I was. I mean, I thought I was gone.
Go use and laugh at that, y'all.
Oh, yeah. But, and another one Halloween, when we had that old Jeep, Daddy, you remember that old Jeep, Daddy? We tied the hood of an old car on the back of the Jeep. And he took a bunch of us to Fountain Run. And we'd go around them curves, that old hood. This. And Daddy didn't know that he'd killed every one of them. Another thing we used to slip and do was when the peddling truck would come by. Of course, we didn't have no money, but they didn't know about it on the regular. Well, if we could get hold of a dozen eggs, we'd sell them. And sometimes we'd get an old hen and sell an old hen. And Daddy would want to know why we wasn't getting no eggs. No hens. I didn't know what to. And we'd have to lie to him. One more thing I used to do, but I think I've told you about this, Daddy. When you'd have a revival, your revival would break. Well, before you get a chance to count your money, I'd always get in. I'd always give all the rest of them $1 or $2, and they wouldn't tell on me.
That's the reason I never got a whole lot out of preaching.
But we have had a lot of good times together.
Y'all used to race the horses on?
Yeah, we used to ride the horse, get over in that back field and race the horses. That's just as hard as we can go. And I guess I could even get on it.
Two cattle deals.
His favorite horse was June. He was one of the best riders around, and June was the fastest horse that we had. And I don't know, you remember June, Dad? Got her foot hung back there in the fence, and we had to put her to sleep. And but he was a good rider. When I think of Ralph, I have to be a little bit more serious. Because Ralph is one of the finest people that's ever lived on this earth. And I think that is very important for all of the young people here who never knew Ralph. to understand that. Ralph overcame adversity, and he overcame tremendous adversity. And another definition for that would be Ralph accomplished a high degree of excellence in his life because he uplifted himself from significant adversity to better himself. You need to understand that. That's very important. You need to understand that that is the kind of heritage and background that you have in your family. Because if you forget that, then that's when young people start falling back, when they don't know where they came from, and they don't know their heritage, and they don't know what people have done before them to get them where they are, so they can continue the pursuit of excellence, continue to overcome adversity in their life, and then the string won't be broken. You keep going up and up and up and up. There are some Christian religions that believe that you live and you die and you go to heaven, and if you accomplish a certain level of excellence in your life, you get to stay. And if you don't, you come back. And you live again in somebody's soul, and you die and you go to heaven. And at some point in time when you perfect yourself so much, you get to stay in heaven. Now I know we don't believe that, but there is a very dominant Christian denomination that believes that. If there's any truth in that, then Ralph definitely was ready to go to heaven because he conquered fear. Now I don't know if you've ever thought about that or not, but he conquered fear. I haven't come close to conquering fear. I wish I could. Ralph conquered fear. He had a heart of gold. He was the epitome of love. He was a gentle, caring. When you think of Jesus Christ and the characteristics of Jesus Christ, think of a lot of those same characteristics that were characteristic of Ralph. He was such a forgiving person, such a tolerant person. Wendell referred to him as taking chances. Yeah, he was a daring person. He enjoyed that. That's why he was such a good horse rider, because he wasn't afraid. He was not afraid to ride. But when you think of Ralph, you need to think of those kinds of characteristics. All of the good that Ralph did, all of the good influences that he left here, the way he touched everybody's lives. I wish somebody would talk about his hospital ministry that was renowned in this county, and that everybody seemingly was familiar with, and everybody appreciated, and he touched so many people's lives with that ministry. He was very special to me in a lot of ways. I'm 4 years younger than Ralph. I looked up to him tremendously. He used to come to Antioch School. We used to have a family over there, Smith brothers. And they later repented, but when we were at Antioch School, they were downright mean, some of them. Ray was never mean, if you all know Ray. But they had two of them that were mean, and they would get on our, we would have a problem with them, and Ralph would have to come over there. It's a one-room school. He'd get off the bus and he'd stay at the school all day. Miss Prophet wouldn't let him come in. He'd have to sit outside by the tree. But he'd come over there to be sure the Smith boys didn't hurt us, didn't bother us. He'd done that several days, not just one or two, but several days. He did it so much that Miss Prophet finally let him come into the school. so he could stay warm in the wintertime, she kind of come to accept it. But see, we appreciate that. We used to get on the school bus and the older boys would mess with the young kids and wouldn't let them out of their seats when it come time to get out. And I can remember people saying, you know, I'd start to get up and somebody wouldn't let me off the school bus or let me out of my seat, and they would say, hey, don't mess with him, he's a Strode. And I knew exactly who they were talking about. They were talking about Ralph. And Ralph had a tremendous influence on me for that. He always stood up for the underdog. Nobody got mistreated. Nobody got mistreated. He took a stand for what was right. And it didn't matter who it went against. If it wasn't popular, tough. If it was right, he took a stand for it. If he had to fight his best friend, he fought his best friend. And he was stout. You're exactly right. Ralph had a big upper body. He was stout, and he knew how to fight if he needed to. And if he needed to, he would do it in a heartbeat if it was for the right cause. And other things, you know, that are kind of special to me. I'm thinking, we went and got Ralph when he had his surgery, and we're coming back, and we're driving Daddy's brand new Ford. And I remember we're coming back, and we're running. We just kept getting faster and faster, and Ralph just kept saying, faster, faster. We couldn't. We got up to 80, and he kept pushing faster and faster. And I remember one time looking down, and we were sitting on 100, and it wasn't fast enough for him. He kept wanting to go faster to get home. And that's the way he was. He was an exciting person to be around. He was very laid back, very easygoing. At the same time, he was very gentle and loving and caring and exciting, forgiving. He was loaded down with good characteristics. He was loaded down with them. And everybody needs to know that. My children need to know that, and your children, and everybody here needs to know that. They need to know where they came from. They need to know it, and they need to remember it every day of their life. And Ralph is part of us. He's part of where he's touched us all, and he's part of where we came from. I got a speeding ticket when I was 18 years old and didn't have any money. Needless to say, I got a speeding ticket going to Glasgow and wasn't going to tell anybody for fear. I told Ralph, the only one I would even think about telling. And, you know, Ralph was only 6 years older than me, and Ralph didn't ever care too much about money. As long as he got by is about all he cared about. You know, whatever he had was yours if you needed it. And that, I know you hear people say that about other people, but it was the truth with Ralph. He would give you anything if you needed it. He gave you a lot more than you could give him. He could always give you more. You could not outgive him. He was that kind of a person. He would give you a lot more than you deserved. So he met me up there. He told me to meet him up there in the courthouse in Glasgow. I mean, he's only 24 years old, and I don't, you know, he acted like he ran the city or something. But we met up there. He took me in there to the judge. And of course, you know, I've never even been in Glasgow, basically. But he took me in there to the judge, and he went up and talked to the judge, and he got me out of my ticket. Don't ask, I have no idea how he managed to do it, especially considering Ralph. You know what I'm talking about. I mean, he probably, maybe he'd been up there, seen the judge a time or two, but he got me out of my ticket, and we came on back. Those kind of things were special to me. And those are the kind of things that there's a lot of funny stories on Ralph. Everybody in Berrien County could probably tell you a funny story almost. But to me, some of these things that tell you who he was, the kind of man he was. I'm in Korea, And I didn't ask Ralph to do this, but Ralph goes to Bowling Green, and the way Ruth Ann was telling, he was down there every day checking on her. And she was pregnant with John Parker. And I know the morning that she went to deliver John Parker, Ralph knocks on the door. He's down there. So he, you know, that's the kind of person he was. He was always there to help you, and he had a knack for knowing when you needed help, and he was always there to help you. And he was a good guy. He was as good a guy as ever lived on this earth, I guess. And I was glad Barbara told the story about Mr. Hall, because I think Mr. Hall and Ralph had a lot of things in common. And I know Mr. Hall took up for Ralph down there that day. And a lot of people didn't take up for Ralph like they should have, I guess, back then. And but anyway, I love Ralph, and I think of him all the time. I think of him all the time. And I just wish that all of you had a chance to get to know him, to have gotten to know him. And I guess I better hush that.
He's long.
Wendell doesn't remember anything, so whatever I say, he's got to believe. But anyway, when we got there, they shared a bathroom with other people. And of course they had a bunch of candy, and I'm sure they had bought it just for us. But we both ate, and we both got sick. I remember that story. And,
I do remember that. And that night it snowed. And the next morning, how about this, Jack? The next morning, Mandy Forbes and them lived out Coastal High School. And so Ralph, just like Daddy, had to get out in that snow, and he was doing big things. We drove out there in the snow. Now, I remember that one.
and I remember the day that Nancy and I drove him before the surgery. Now there we get that. We drove up to Louisville, we stopped and ate, and we went on to the hospital, and then I came back, and I was a union. First Sunday that he got to come back to church. And I remember he stood up in such a beautiful testimony. He was good. He was good. He was very special. He was good to all of us. And I remember a story. The money part. I used to go to Tompkinsville, to Hazel's and all around when I was young, and Mammy's. And I was up there once, and I helped Ralph top. I didn't have a dime. I had some gas in the car, and that's all. And I went and helped Ralph top some trees, and he gave me some money, and that was my spending money. But he was special, you know. He made everybody feel special. And John talked about him going to the hospital, and many times. I've had people that tell me that Ralph would come and visit them in the hospital. And I remember when of course I was in the State Police Academy. Ralph died the day before I graduated from the academy. And I remember when my commander came and told me. I remember just great things about him, but he was very special. And I was glad that he's my brother.
Jerry talked about him going to hospitals a lot. Used to, when you went to Glasgow, you had to have a car to get in to see people a long time ago. And I know this woman that you kept a day center, whatever you want to call it, you got your cards from. A friend of mine said she was up there one day to see somebody. Well, Ralph would go visit a whole lot. And she said everybody's card that he asked for, they was all out. And said, finally, this woman told him, said, Ralph, said, if you'll just get away from here, leave me alone, said, I'll give you a card and you can go see anybody in this hospital you want to. And he was talking about the snows, how he loved to get out in the snows. I remember one time, him and Joe, we were up there. Of course, I lived with Ralph and Nancy for about a year before Joe and I married. And he was very special to me. He used to tell me a lot of times he'd come in from work and he'd say, sis, I had a seizure at work today. I said, don't tell Nancy I don't work. But they got out one day, there's a big snow on, I don't know how many people. They pulled out of ditches. And after that, something tore up on his car. Of course, Nancy, she'd fuss at him sometimes, you know, about something he did. But Jay used to tell me some stories. There's one funny story on Ralph that I won't tell you. When he worked for the state, running a jackhammer, why, they was having problems with it, and it's working somewhere between Tompkinsville and Camilla. So they needed something to grease it or something, and they was close to a drugstore. And Ralph went to the drugstore there in Camilla, and he told them that he wanted a jar of Vaseline. And they brought out this little jar of Vaseline, set it on the counter, and he said, no, said, I want one bigger than that. So he went back and he got the next size and he brought it up there, and Ralph said no, and he pointed behind him, and there was a great big old jar of Vaseline sitting back there. He said, no, I want that in back there. Said, I just got married. But later, Ralph and Nancy both were special to me, and Gay and Sandy's always been special to me because I was with them so much. And I love all of my family, and I'm proud of all of them. I hope we always stay close even when Daddy's gone.
I'm afraid I missed most of Ralph's growing up years. Of course, while I was in the Navy, but like Daddy said, when we were older, we were together a whole lot. Of course, I don't have a lot of funny stories about Ralph, but I remember him being kind of a person that you were always at ease with. And he was the person that never met a stranger. He could talk to anybody. Probably the opposite of what I am, but that was just his nature. One thing that I remember about him, when he was sick, and of course we stayed with him some, turned staying with him. Ralph had false teeth, or part of them were false, I don't remember exactly what. But me and him was working our way into the bathroom one day, just a few days before he died. He was going to wash his teeth. That's what he was going for. So he took taking his teeth out, and he looked at them, and there's a little speck of food on the back of them. He looked at it, he said, that's one little speck won't get away. Another thing I remember real well, they got into camping. Ralph did, and Nancy, the girls, real big. And they'd gone down to the lake and set up this little tent. Of course, it was just barely big enough for 4 people. And they invited us to come down and spend the night with us. So, of course, we had little enough sense to go. And, of course, Ralph could handle any situation. Come bedtime, you know, there's a tent for 4, 8 people lay down there. So the best I remembered, it was just about like putting pickles in a jar. You know? But everybody would lay on their side, so the first one turned, and then the next one turned, you know. We made it through the night, that was real good. We had a lot of good times with Ralph and Nancy and the girls. A lot of good times. He, talking about him not being afraid, he sure wasn't afraid of anything. I topped trees with him, And I've seen him after he topped the tree. He would get up on top of the butt, you know, where he cut the tree off. 30 feet in the air, 40 feet in the air, didn't matter. He'd get right up on top of it and stand. He was really a special person. Really was.
If I had a mic in my hand, I could probably talk a little better. I'm used to a mic. My earliest memories with Ralph goes back when Joe Eagle dressed up as old Santa Claus up at where Joe's mom and daddy lives now, Joe Spears' mom and daddy lives now. I remember I was in the kitchen, had a spoon cleaning out the bread pan, the crust, thank you, that struck to the bread pan. And Joe knocked on the back door, and I looked up, and 2 steps later, I and Ralph and everybody else was in under the bed, scared to death. Now and I believe in 1948. J.E., I believe you were there too, if I'm not mistaken. That's the earliest time that I can remember that J.E., Ralph, and I used to play on the banks out there at the old home place where J.E. Spear lives now. We used to walk down to Gully Creek Church, and we used to get on the old flatbed truck, William, I believe that's right, of the Golds. Well, they'd come by and pick us up sometime, and of course we went down to Gully Creek Church. We moved to Fountain Run, and we had a cow named Ralph. And that cow, you could go in the field anywhere, set your stool down, put your bucket under, and you could milk out old Ralph. And she gave milk. She was a good, gentle milking cow. Now, I don't know if she was named after Ralph, or she was named after Ralph. Well, now, someone has already covered the story on the mare named June. And June was never beaten in a horse race that I ever recall. And Ralph could handle her. I couldn't handle her, and nobody else could really handle that mare like June, like Ralph could. But the best that I remember, old June never lost a race. Daddy always had something for us to do. I mean, he had 10 things for us to do when he would leave for revivals. We never got them all done. But when we would be out worming the tobacco or chopping out the tobacco, the Western Corral came on at a certain time, and Ralph and I always would go down to Jack Ray's when we could and slip off, and we'd watch TV. And that was one of our favorite shows, was the Western Corral. I believe, I don't know who said that Ralph never met a stranger. Anywhere that he went, he never met a stranger. And one other thing Ralph was always good at, he had what I call one-liners. Nobody could outwit Ralph. He was a candid person pretty quick. He'd get to the point real quick. But he always had real good one-liners. And if y'all want to know what one-liners is, well, I'll tell you after this, my interpretation. J.E. said Ralph was always large for his size. And he always protected us as well as others at school. I remember that very vividly. Ralph didn't let anybody get beat up or get abused as long as he was around. I don't know whether you all remember this or not, but Ralph used to say about the Strode family, it looks like there's enough of us to start a quartet. Did y'all ever remember that? Looks like there's enough of us that we ought to be able to start a quartet out of the group. And of course, the Strode family started about 16, 17 years ago. May have been some prayers answered along that line. And I've heard Ralph stand in church a lot of times and make a talk. Now, of course, I was young and they didn't sink in a lot back then, but he could tell you about a time and a place where the Lord saved him. And he always ended his talks, most of the time, by saying, y'all pray for me and my family. And I just know that I've heard him say when my girls reach the age of accountability that they'll be saved. One song that was sung at Ralph's funeral was Far Above the Starry Skies. And I believe Ralph's up there tonight. I believe, you know, the Bible says there's a spirit that bears witness with us, that we know that we're the children of God. When we can feel somebody's testimony, and I felt Ralph's testimony. Who conducted Ralph's, William, funeral? Who conducted Ralph's funeral? That needs to be brought out tonight.
Brother Britt.
Yeah, Brother Brett.
Brother Britt?
I don't know who else.
Well, what were the other songs that the Toms Four sung at Ralph's funeral?
One of them was Hallelujah, What a Morning.
Hallelujah, what a morning. And
Did they sing the lighthouse? Did they sing the lighthouse at his funeral?
I don't know. But I know the church was run over and there was standing room only. And of course it was a sad time for the whole community. But I remember sitting with Ralph just a few days. Of course we took turns. And Ralph knew that his time was close. Because he told me, he said, now Wayne, he said, I know I won't be here much longer. But he said, I'll be better off. But I remember the epilepsy spells that Ralph had, and I believe the Lord took care of him many times along the highway. That's all I have. And I'm proud to be a part of this family.
You was gonna tell us what one-liners was once. I can't even remember yesterday. But I will say this, he loved town meetings, and he loved singing. And to my knowledge, that's the only time Tom Cole ever sung at funeral. And I don't know if I remember this or just heard it said, but when Ralph was in school, the teacher was checking their hearing. And she had him up listening to the clock, watching. And she said, now back up, you know, as long as you can hear. And he kept the back in the way back in the back. She said, you can't hear that back there, can you? Yeah. What's it saying? Tick-tock.
Well, you know, one other thing is really about Nancy, girls. I thought about it and I've tried to put myself in this position, and maybe many of you have too, a lot of times. But Nancy gave up her husband and her mother in just a very short time. And that was a lot. That was a lot to endure, a lot to go through. And you had a good mother also.
Yeah.
It's good to rap.
I would say this, I know I don't say I'm talking too much, but I was in Bowling Green one time and Mr. McGuire, he told me, talking about Ralph, they had a special relationship. And I remember he told me with tears coming down his cheeks how much he loved Ralph, how much he respected Ralph. And I don't know if you know where Ralph was saved or not, but Ralph was saved at Capitol Hill Church. I'm sure Daddy remembers it, but no one has mentioned it.
I didn't know he was saved.
Yeah,
That's
he was
where I was
saved.
saved. I didn't know he was saved.
He didn't tell it for several years, but that's where he was saved.
Does anybody remember his baptizing? I was thinking that when he come up, he shouted and he spit water, but hopefully somebody could confirm that. But anybody remember his baptizing?
That's pretty close.
One night, Marvin and I was sitting in the house, and the phone rang. I answered the phone. He said, Uncle Guy? I said, yeah. He said, this is Ralph Strode. Well, I said, where in the world are you? He was in Kankakee, and he had come up there to help put in these cables, TV cables, something like that. And I said, where are you at? And he told me, you don't know how to get to the house. I said, you just stay where you are, I'll come and get you. So I went. I went and got him, and he stayed a couple of nights with us. And it was cold, Lord how much it was cold. And he was wanting to come to Kentucky and come back home so bad. And sure enough, they did send that crew back down here. They didn't have to stay up there and work on that cable. And when he was in the hospital at Glasgow, I was down here. And I went to see him. And he asked me, and it never struck me till later, how many kids I had. And I said, three boys. He says, I thought you had 4. I said, no, Ralph, I only got 3. But I had 4. I had a stepson that he was counting. But I didn't think of it till 6 months later. It wasn't long after that he passed away.
Now, some of you don't know it, but this is my brother-in-law, Guy.
Meanest man in Kentucky.
And here's his wife talking. And I've always appreciated Guy.
One other thing that I remember too, Ralph's last crew, was the bridge crew that they talked about. And, when he was still pretty healthy, they would lower him, they tied him in a rope, in a little harness, and they'd lower him down, and they'd lower that jackhammer down. And Ralph would run that jackhammer, he was the strongest one. But when he got real sick, the other members of the crew thought so much of him that he never told anybody. And Ralph would lay under a tree, or he'd lay in the truck, and he'd sleep, and they never said a word about it. They covered for him for months, many months. They let Ralph, they just let him just rest, because he couldn't work. But he carried them for so long. They carried him for a while.
You talked about him visiting the hospital out June's uncle and mine, Eddie Slaughter, was there a lot. So I know this for a fact. He talked about, and if we go see Eddie, it's about time for Ralph to come. And he'd say, Ralph always comes. And maybe observed too much, enough that he said, now, if you've got company, he won't stay long. He'll just stick his head in the door and speak to you and say, how are you tonight? And he said, and if you're feeling bad, he won't stay. But if you're feeling very well and you're by yourself, he'll sit down and visit with you. So he seemed to sense whether you needed to talk or whether you didn't. And you mentioning Daddy. The night that Daddy died, I was there with him and Cap. And of course, she wasn't too well and she wasn't much help. And Daddy wanted to get up, and I couldn't get him up. You know, he was just fussing, I won't up. And, you know, we kept saying, well, Ralph will be here pretty soon. You know, we were trying for Ralph. And when Ralph came, Ralph and I got him up in the chair, and he fell over. You know, he was dying. But I never will forget that Ralph was there, and we were lifting and tugging and pulling with Daddy the best that we could, trying to do what he wanted. But Ralph was there. And I don't know if I'll tell this, but I'm going to. When they was picking out his pallbearers, they liked one. And of course, Randall on the farm out there, and Mama said, why don't we let Randall, he owns the farm and works out here, and I just couldn't help it. I said, well, if you're going to get either one of these Strodes, don't get Randall, get Ralph. He was there. He was the one that was helping do what he could for him. And Ralph was pallbearer at Daddy's funeral, and I think he would have been proud to have had him. And he also, Jim remembers this, there was a song, we finally learned to sing it. What was that song? Nobody had ever heard it. It was at a revival. And he up and requested, and Evelina looked at it, she said, I never have played that. I said, and who can sing it? Nobody. She said, Ralph, can you sing it? He said, I don't know it either, but it looks like it'd be pretty good.
Does any of you remember just before Ralph died, it was, I don't know how long, but it wasn't many days that he didn't know anyone, and Mom went to see him. You recognize the patterns of the man.
Another thing, I think, if I remember right, Ralph didn't suffer.
It didn't seem to me.
In all his sickness now, he didn't seem to suffer.
I remember when he had that first surgery, remember how his eyes were so black and red, and I know Joe and I stayed that night, and I fed him his first breakfast the next morning, and I thought he never would get it eat. He would chew and chew and chew, and you'd think he's going to swallow, you know, and then he'd chew and chew. It just took him forever to eat after that. I don't think the doctors really thought Ralph would be in as good a shape as he was in. His mobility, I mean, you know, some of his functions that were slowed from what they were before. But I think Ralph was in much better shape than they thought he would be.
Well, didn't they only give him, if I remember right, they only gave him a few days actually to live.
About 6
6
months,
months,
as I recall.
and he lived 6 years.
About 6 years and 6 months.
I know he used to shoot off a lot of dynamite on that job he was on. He said one day that, I don't know where he was working, but it was up on the Medco County somewhere. And he said he went to this woman's house and shoot close to her house. And he went to her house to tell her what he was going to do. And she asked him, he was the one that lit the fuse. She asked him why he was the one that lit the fuse. And he told her, he said, I'm ready to get out. But I don't know where on my previous thing. He said, I know where I'm going.
Sambo, you ready with some of your stories? You ready with some Ralph stories?
Oh, I don't guess there's anything else.
No, tell them.
I was talking about Ralph not being afraid of anything. That wasn't very much.
stayed up there with us all one winter, stayed right smart. We get out monthly, rabbit hunting, squirrel hunting. I remember being down there and holler on the brink. We got a squirrel out there. Got a big squirrel. It went up this two big trees standing there, and they was pretty close together. Squirrel, it went up one of these trees. Ralph, he climbed that tree. Up there, branch bed there, solid rock. Scared him a bit. When he goes up in one tree, and this squirrel goes up in the other tree, and he can climb up there, he's going to jump over that other. And I just begged him not to do that. Finally, I don't think he did. I think he finally come back down. I just could see him get to the ground. He never tried it. And he wasn't afraid. He tried it. Caught a lot of rats. I think a lot of balls I trouble with that.
Mommy, I want to pick up.
When we moved to Fountain Run, one of our closest neighbors was a black man, Jack Ray. And they had this one son, Jim. And we hadn't been down there too long until me and Ralph went down to Jack Ray's. And of course, I was talking to Jack, the man, and Ralph, he is, I believe, Wayne said he never seen a stranger. But I looked over there and him and Jim were just like they had known each other all their life. That black boy at Jack Ray's talking. And I have a lot of precious memories of Ralph. And I said, told different people, I said, he ought to make a preacher because he didn't ever see a stranger. And there's a fellow used to be at Fountain Run named Sox Eaton. You remember him, Randall?
Very well.
Now, Ralph rode around with him. And I'd say that Ralph probably drank some with him. I don't know that to be so. But on this Saturday morning, Sox Eaton put a case of beer in Ralph's car, in the trunk. And of course, Ralph, he just liked to be on the move all the time. I was a pastor at Trammell Fork Church, and he was going out of Scottsville toward Bowling Green. And he went over one of these little rides and run into somebody. So he called the state patrol. What was his name?
Ed Ballard.
Ballard?
Ed Ballard.
A real nice fella. His wife, and he had two twin daughters, girls. Of course, they was this small then. But they called Ballard, and he was a friend of mine, Ballard was. And he said he came out there with his dad and said, they talked. He said, to Ralph, he said, I want to raise your trunk. He said, I want to look into your trunk. So he said, Ralph raised the trunk. Here sits this case of beer. Now, he told me this is help to take patrol here. He said, state patrol, he said, Daddy didn't raise me to do this. Ralph had a lot of good qualities about him. When they moved into Glasgow, he visited the hospital. It's been said more times than ever preacher in Barron County. And he visited enough till everybody in that, the nurses, they all knew him. And they had a memorial, Gay and Sandra, of Ralph. You go in that, of course it's been a long time, Ralph's been gone. But you went through to the first, you turn right to the one hall, and you turn left back the other, and it's the first waiting room on the left. It was hanging a memorial of Ralph there. And I'd go over there occasionally, and he'd take me to nearly every room in the hospital. He said, Daddy, I want you to go with me to see so-and-so. He said, now these people are Catholics. But he said, I want you to go and visit with them. And regardless of their religious standard, it didn't make no difference in Ralph. He just went to visit with them and talked to them just like he'd always known. It has been said, I believe I was a pastor of Capitol Hill Church. I'm not for sure. Do you remember June or not, dear Barbara? Mr. and Miss Hall came in.
Were you the pastor? Yeah.
Not with
Well,
Ralph.
I know I pastored the
No,
church
I don't know about when Ralph.
when Ralph got saved. But anyway, Ralph was a good man. Another thing I'd like to tell my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, Ralph was coming, Brother Enoch Carter had the authority to cut right-of-ways with telephone lines. And there's a working at Upton. And somebody would stay every Saturday morning and clean up the house where they had living in a house. And I don't know who it was at this particular time, but he went out and the rest of them was out working. And he bought a bunch of strong drink. I just don't know what it was. And they, I guess Ralph was drinking with them. I'm not saying he was or wouldn't. But right in front of Union Church, they had this accident and Ralph almost got killed. And I was in a revival at Friendship Church. And they called Ellsworth, and he came, and I saw him at the door, motioning me to come back. And they was singing the last song, and I was supposed to preach. And I remember my text very well that night. Time and chance happen to them all. It's in Ecclesiastes, I don't know what verse and what chapter. So after the service, Brother Collins home, pastor, and I said, Brother Carl, I'm going to go to the hospital. When I got to the hospital, they hadn't got Ralph all cleaned up. They was working on his face, but they turned him over after I got there. And his back was all black and blue where he was in this accident. Now, one of the boys got killed. Who was it, Randall?
Francis.
Francis.
Jesse Francis.
He got killed in this accident. But as I said, Ralph had a lot of good qualities. And he never did cause. In fact, none of my children ever called me any serious trouble. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate all of my family. And I'm going to say this. I talk to a lot of people, a lot of young people. And I'll say now, sometimes they ask me, say, how old are you? And I tell them age. And maybe I'll pat them on the hand or back. And I'll say, now, if you be a good boy or a good girl, I said, God might let you to be 85 or 6 years old. So be good boys and good girls. Because you're going to look back over your life some of these days. Whether it's well spent or whether it's ugly spent, you look back over it. And the happiest people are today that try to spend their life doing the things that's right.
We've got to go, because I've got to be Greg Smith, and he's staying all night at home.
Before we go, I want Jay and Sandra. I picked up a black man about a year ago, and it used to be the neighbor, Coy Ray. Most of y'all know Coy Ray. Coy Ray was in pretty rough shape when I picked him up. He wanted to ride home. He wanted to go out and see the old home place one more time. He began to talk. And all he talked about was Ralph. Ralph was his buddy. He thought a lot of Ralph. And he told me a lot of things about Ralph that I didn't know. But yeah, me and Ralph had a big time. Me and Ralph had a big time. And even people at work, the old boys that's on the bridge crews and different ones, some of the old ones that still work with the state, still remember Ralph. And, you know, things that because I don't, all I remember is on Sunday mornings when it was meeting time at Union, Ralph and Nancy and the girls would stop, and we'd get to chat for a few minutes, and Ralph would come in, and the slowest talking person seemed like to me that ever, but I was just barely can remember. That's all I remember is they'd stop when they'd go to church at Union. But I just wanted the girls to know that even now, that long, people still remember him, not just family, but other people still remember him for what he was.
And they made a point they came to Sunday school and church every Sunday morning.
Yeah.
They sure did. And they passed up a lot of good churches on the way, but they came to you.
Well, you
June,
know.
you were gonna,
Well, I really don't have a whole lot to say. Everything I know has already been said. But I think the key to Ralph was his humility. He had a lot of humility, and he made people feel very good about themselves. And that's why he could make so many friends, because he didn't judge them. He accepted them, and he genuinely liked people. And that was his key for me.
You know, talk about Ralph riding a horse.
I'll tell you about Margaret, she almost got killed last week. She was riding a horse, running it hard as it could go, and she fell off of it. Her foot went through the stirrup. And if that man at Walmart hadn't got out there and unplugged it.
I'd heard him when I got home.
Anybody have anything else, Sandra?
I thought Sandra gave it.
Yeah, I'd like to say something. Like Randall County said, some of our best times as families was when we was at their house and when we were camping and stuff. I don't know if Melinda remembers this, but one year we were camping and they were down there and I caught a big fish. You remember it? And I had it on a string in the water. And Mom or Daddy went to town to get a camera because I was going to take a picture of my big prize fish. And Melinda got down there and let it go. But we did have a lot of good times with Randall and Patty. And when I think of my daddy, of course, the three things I guess that he loved most in the world was God. There's no doubt about that God come first in his life. His brothers and sisters, and his Strode family meant the world to him. He never wanted to miss a Strode reunion. He never wanted to miss one. And y'all all meant the world to him. And another thing that meant a lot to him was, going to church. We always had to go to church. I didn't mind going to church, but man, I hated that long ride to Fountain Run every Sunday, But we always went to church. And I don't even remember who I was with, but I know the night that he died, we were in church in Fountain Run at a revival. I don't even remember who took me to the hospital, but I can remember sitting, on the porch at the hospital, and Mama telling us Mama was at the hospital and somebody took us up there. And I remember him telling us that Daddy died. And I want to thank you, for all the good that you have for me and Gabe when we was little. And it took me, I know Daddy always prayed that we would get right with God. It took me a long time, but I am right with God. And I used to like to come to the Strode reunions because I knew everybody here was saved, and I was afraid somebody's going to say something to me about getting saved or going to church. And I just hated coming. Mommy. But now that I'm saved, it means a lot to me. And I know it's late and everything. I appreciate everybody talking about this. Because Anthony doesn't really know who Ralph Strode is. He has Pa Doug, which is a good man. But someday he's going to know Ralph Strode. And this date's going to mean the world to him. Because he never had the opportunity to know his grandfather. And I just want to thank y'all for doing this for me and Gabe, because it meant a lot. I appreciate everybody staying late, and I really enjoyed it.
Vera?
I'm so proud to be a Strode. I got to talk to Jan a little while ago, and y'all might not understand this. And I just told Sandra not too long ago, but I remember when Daddy was sick and at home. And if I remember right, he had to take a lot of medicine. And they had to put it in these little cups, and they put water in it to soften up the pills because they didn't have them as fancy as they are now. And I was doing that. I put a little water in that little cup, and I was mashing up his pills, and I spilled a little bit of it. And for a lot of years, I always thought that that was why Daddy died. And you have to remember that I was a 9-year-old girl. And, you know, that's pretty rough, thinking that. But, you know, I'm older now, and I'm finally getting a true grip on who I am in the Lord first, Grandpa, and who I am as Ralph Strode's little girl. And out of all the daddies in this whole world, I wouldn't want another daddy but Ralph Strode. And I'm proud to be his little girl. And I'm thankful that he took me to church. And I'm thankful that I know that I'm saved. And for the older ones here, or the younger ones, or however it is, I got saved in July and Daddy died in August. And some of y'all know that I've been to a lot of different churches, and I've tried a lot of different things. Me and Grandpa's talked about this. But what's important is that we know that we're saved. Where you go to church and what you call yourself ain't what's important. But if you're hearing the truth and you're saved, you're truly, truly saved. That's what's important. And I really believe that God has his hand on our family. And I ask too that y'all remember me and Kevin. If the Lord works things out, I plan on going home in 1994 and being a wife and being a mother. And I've never done that, you know, but that's what I really think he wants me to do, Grandpa. I think God wants me to be a wife and be a mother. And I want to thank Uncle Kay and Aunt Jan in front of you all, because, you know, if something happens to me, there's a story you'll never know. And maybe this will plant a seed, Uncle Kay, that somebody might do it for somebody else. But after Daddy died, it was hard for Mama to go back to Union. And we did go to church for about a year after Daddy died as a family in Glasgow. But Uncle Kay and Aunt Jan drove all the way from Bowling Green to Glasgow and picked me up every Sunday morning. And when Kevin and I married, because see, there's a lot of people that don't know. When Kevin and I married, Uncle Kay gave me away. And Mom and Doug were married at that time, and I love Doug. And he is a good man, and he's a good grandpa. But out of this family, Uncle Kay is the closest thing to a father figure. And you know, that's important that we continue that. When we see a weak place, then we all have to just get right there and make that place strong. And I feel like that's what they do. And I know Aunt Helen's gone, but you know, Aunt Helen's always been a second mama to me. And you know, she stood by me, and I've not always stood by her. You know, and even I never looked at her as a mama. I guess maybe she's a sister or something, but she's always been there too. And there's been times that Uncle Wayne has stopped by work to check on me. And Barbara and William, you know, they've come in before, and you know, and it's just nice to know that you're not forgotten, because it would be very easy to be forgotten. And you know, I could rattle on all night, but I just want to tell y'all that I love you, and that I hope we never stop meeting. And this is probably the best Christmas ever that I've ever had. And it's nothing that you gave me that I can put my fingers on. It's not tangible. It's what you gave me in my heart. And I, like Sandra, am thankful because Keza will know who Ralph Strode is. She'll know her Grandpa Strode. And y'all just keep remembering us in your prayers, and I love you all.
As I've always felt like that our family has been richly blessed, and there's been a lot of people that have had a lot of influence, other than just brothers and sisters. And I remember telling June when Joe died, that as long as I can remember Joe, I can remember June. And our sister-in-laws, our brother-in-laws, the Vestal Hall family, other families that we stayed at, all had a very important role, very important factor, I felt like, in the Strode family, and maybe more so the younger Strode family. But I'm thankful also for our in-laws, my sisters-in-laws and my brother-in-laws, for the impact they've had on my life. And this may not make a lot of sense to a lot of people, but as I look at our family, and I think of a sister that died that really none of us knew. And I don't know if you've ever heard the story or not, but just take a second to share this with you. But I've heard Daddy tell it, and this one may not be exactly right, but it's close to right, that when Anna Mae died, and Daddy went to the funeral home to make arrangements, the casket cost $12.50, and Daddy had $5. And so we owed him $7.50. He agreed to pay him when his tobacco sold. And Daddy took his tobacco off to Glasgow, I believe it was, and sold it. And they mailed the check back to him. He goes into the post office to pick it up. It's general delivery, I guess, at that time. And the tobacco check was exactly $7.50. And so Daddy took it to the funeral director and turned it over to him.
He made it on the street there.
And give it to him.
He didn't want to take it,
But he did. Yeah. But I thought we've lost a sister. We lost her mother. We lost Ralph. And then we lost Joe. And I've reasoned in my mind, God has taken the best of our family to be at the best place there is, and that's heaven. The best first. that helps me, and not help anybody else. I think our discussion has been wonderful. I think it's helped us as a family unit. And I'm sure others that are here tonight have thought of family members that have been special to them in a special way, like Ralph, when we were talking about Ralph. And I think it's important that we all continue to not let this heritage that John talked about, and that we continue to build on these standards of excellence, and as a family unit, be certain that as we get a little older, that the next generation understands their heritage and have even a higher standard of excellence and a higher relationship, a closer relationship to the good Lord and our Savior. It's been a great night. Anybody else have anything?
One thing I want to add. Jeff Deaton is the superintendent of Sunday school at the Old Baptist Church in Fountain Lane. And by the way, you're doing a great job, Jeff. And just about every Sunday, I noticed last Sunday in particular, and I notice it every time he says it, how thankful he is for his heritage and how he was raised. And the heritage does play a great part in people's lives. And I noticed that he says that just about every time. And I'm thankful. He said, you may get tired of hearing me say it, but I'm so thankful for the way I was raised and my heritage.
Yeah. I was up to see Greg 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I said, are you coming to a Christmas get together? He said, no. He said, nobody care about me. They don't want to come see me. I said, well, come on. So I want us to do a better job of going to see him while we can.
A good reminder to all of us.
Okay, I want to tell you one more thing. About 3, 4, 5 years ago, I saw Leroy Britt, Brother Leroy Britt, and he come up and he told me, he said, I've never told you this before, but he said, your daddy told me, and I'm assuming this is the first time that he was in the hospital. Then he found out that he had cancer and everything. But he said, I went in and saw him, and he said that he was fine. You know, his spirits were fine, and Brother Britt talked to him, and finally Daddy told him, he said, well, so Brother Britt said, the Lord's passed by, and I'm going to be all right. And, you know, and I just rejoiced to know that. But you know, I just wanted to share that. A lot of y'all know Brother Britt, but that's what he had told me.
A verse of Away in the Manger. Acapella, of course. Away in a manger, no crib for a bed, the little Lord Jesus laid down his sweet head. The stars in the sky looked down where he lay. The little Lord Jesus asleep on the hay. How about a verse of Joy to the World? Joy to the world, the Lord is come. Let earth receive our King. Let every heart prepare him room. And heaven and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing. Thank you.
Don't forget now, next Christmas it'll be stories about Joe. Then the next year some stories about Mama.
Anybody else? Love everybody. Merry Christmas. Thanks.
How's it going now? You gonna say something?
No, I just wanted to be on there.
Okay. Is that good enough?